If anyone else wants to come in, then tell them yes, come, because we have an awesome debate now about VR and will it replace the smartphone. Does anyone here have a VR headset? Do you use it? Oh, okay, cool. I actually had an Oculus at one of the DK2 kits, and the vision tracking thing broke, so now it doesn't work, which is really sad. So I gave it to my friend who thought it was amazing, but it doesn't really work yet. I seem like the most generous person in the world, so I seem like the crappiest person in the world. But anyway, yeah. But yes, here we have a fantastic panel talking about VR. We've had lots of questions about VR already in various other panels and talks throughout the day, so I think this should be really fascinating. I'm going to hand over straight to them. Can we have a round of applause, please?
That was really nice of you. I just want to say today's been really, really fun, and I've actually really enjoyed all the talks, and it's been nice that there's been a nice little VR integration into some of the questions, so I feel like this panel is ready, so I'm like, yeah, let's talk. So I am Sammy, by the way. Just to let you know, Sarah Jones, who's up there, she's not here today because her little girl is sick, but the lovely Luciana has jumped in to give us a hand, so you might have seen her previously on the last panel, but she's jumped in, which is great. So I'd love you all to quickly introduce yourselves and tell you what you're doing in the VR space. That would be great. So who wants to speak and start? Go for it.
So yeah, I'll shout. So wait, is it on? No.
I don't know.
I'm just going to give you guys another microphone.
Okay. So I am the physical avatar of Sarah. I've been doing tech consulting for a while. One of the companies that I worked for at the beginning of this year was an ed tech platform that wanted to go into VR as a concept of memory palaces, and it just honestly blew my mind at the beginning of the year. And I've been heavily involved in lots of different VR and AR and MR kind of projects. One of which is coming together late November, which is an augmented and virtual reality center, much like Upload Collective type, if you know Upload Collective. It's like an incubator, accelerator, and kind of event space, demo space, academy for VR. And yeah, that's me, just general enthusiast, evangelist, and love all things VR, AR, and more.
So I'm Alicia. I work for Breaking Forth, which is a small VR studio based in King's Cross in London, and we are focusing on creating narrative storytelling experiences for mobile VR. So we've just created our first production. It's 20 minutes long, and it's currently gone on sale on the Oculus Store a couple of weeks ago. So we're just sort of entering the market. We've got a lot of cool ideas coming up for sort of new narrative pieces, and we're sort of exploring how storytelling works using the 360-degree space, because it's very, very different from film, it's very different from theatre, it's sort of got its own rules. So we're sort of learning, starting to explore and starting to learn the best ways really to go into that space and fully tell a story.
Hi, I'm Kim Lee. I'm a human interaction designer, input designer. I do research around different types of narratives. So I've just finished a piece called Human Imagination Task Force, which was an immersive theatre, one-to-one, 10-minute piece that went from immersive theatre into AR to VR. But I also work, I work for Sky at the moment, doing augmented reality and virtual reality design work. I used to work for Apple, I used to work for BBC. Love AR, love VR.
And women in VR too.
And women in VR, of course. If this is working, I hope it is. Is it? No?
Yeah.
I'm just going to shout. So basically these are my lovely pals. I am Sammy. I run a company called Virtual Umbrella, which has been running for the past 2 years, but I've been in VR for about 3 years now, and I do a lot of things behind the scenes in terms of representing women in tech and VR, so that's all exciting. But anyway, we want to concentrate on obviously the exciting part, which is VR. I have found that 2016 has kind of been the trend word. It has been in my life for the past 3-4 years, but I feel like, out there people go, oh, VR, I've seen it everywhere. So I kind of want to see if you think that is the case, or is there something else or has there been another year which you really feel that was actually the real push for VR? Okay, do you want to start?
Well, I suppose there was like the 90s when that happened. and even before that, there's that whole history of like the 50s and all that. But yeah, definitely this year has been pretty crazy for, depending on your definition of VR, whether it's 360 filming, all of that, or whether it's gaming, but it does seem like it's really everywhere at the moment. Yes, I would agree.
I think this year is the first year it's become accessible. So now you can run it off your smartphone. It costs £10 if you want to buy a cardboard. If you want to buy a slightly better cardboard version, it costs sort of up to £100. Everyone already owns the equipment, so all you need to do is go out, get yourself a headset, and it becomes so much easier to get hold of. Whereas before, in sort of the 90s when it first came out, there was such a huge price barrier. You needed to get a giant machine in your house, or you needed to go to some arcade somewhere. And now I feel like this is the first step towards it really being in people's homes and easily distributed. And I think that's why 2016 has been so good for VR.
I think as well as the accessibility, it's also and the price points. We've now seen more content and more kind of wide, diverse uses of VR in different verticals being put out there, and use cases and success stories. So it's really interesting. If you know the Gartner hype cycle, VR was in the shroud of disillusionment, and is now kind of reaching that point where it's peaking, it's going up. So whereas I think AR is kind of coming down. So it's really I mean you've all seen in the press, and whereas before it was a little bit more niche, I think. We're coming out with different uses and big name and industries that are doing stuff in the VR and AR space. I mean, one of the, not to be cliche, but to quote Pokemon Go and say it was a big thing for like augmented reality to have something like that be so. Whether it was a hype and it just like died after, it's really powerful, and we'll see where it goes next.
It's a really interesting point as well. Everyone here, have you seen like advertisements for VR headsets or content on these? I'm having lots of nods. That's a good sign. Because you never quite know. Some people sort of go, "Oh, I've seen it at a friend's house," or I've seen it. I've actually seen it in the Samsung store, which is I absolutely love. I think that's great. Yeah. Hitting back to the headsets. So obviously it's October, and this week passing has just been Oculus Connect 3. So most of our friends are out in San Francisco having a great time, and seeing obviously all the updates for Oculus. And again, we've got a PSVR which is coming out as well. So I would like to kind of get your thoughts on how you feel Oculus and in comparison to PlayStation will do in the next couple of months. Because obviously with PSVR it's more affordable and something that you can plug and play with your PlayStation, which I'm really excited for. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well.
I think from the mainstream point is definitely hitting like the right spot in getting into people's homes, and also being more of a kind of a social thing, as you think about PlayStation around your living room with your family. That's something that can maybe target a little bit of taboo of VR, that you're completely cut off from the world in this like dark room. And now it can be more a little bit of a family experience where you can have with PlayStation. But I think also in terms of hardware, the headsets, like we're heading to a really interesting kind of moment and phase in time where at Oculus Connect we're now hearing about Facebook developing this new standalone. And I think when they do, we are so excited. Because one of the big issue that we've had now is that you need these huge ass computers that you need to carry, or something powerful enough to run the headset. Whereas if it can be run completely mobile, like that can be a really revolutionary point.
That's the next phase, yeah, I think.
So I think with PlayStation, it's a very cool thing to be happening within the games industry. And it's going to revolutionise games. Games are going to be played in a completely different way. You have much different controls once you're in virtual reality. There's a much different experience. But with the new headsets coming out for that Oculus has announced, and with some of the other headsets on the market, they can be used for all different kinds of industries. So there's a really interesting area within education where apps are coming out and headsets are going on children and they're sort of learning in a new way, a much more sort of tactile, interesting way for children rather than just out of textbooks and things. Entertainment, so obviously that's my area. It will be the new way, we believe, that you will consume entertainment, TV and film. It's sort of being used for industry applications as well, so a lot of training for specific industries, various vocational ones, things like oil and gas or aviation. They're looking at VR as a way of training their staff, and I think all these different kinds of headsets coming out on top of the ones for the gaming industry will really sort of help make it mainstream and get out into the world in such a much more substantial way.
I think this is actually working. Can people hear me without that? Okay, I'll stop with that on the microphone. I'm going to be devil's advocate here, and say that I don't think it'll ever be truly mainstream until we can get rid of the headsets altogether. Because at the moment it still is, it is antisocial. You put this big stupid thing on your face. You can't talk to people.
This morning, wasn't it, when Kathy asked me about when will we stop looking like dicks?
When will we stop looking like dicks? when are you not going to have to? I mean, do you have to have a certain? I have a short fringe. Because if I put on a headset with a longer fringe, I then can't see what I'm doing.
My hair is a nightmare for VR.
No, there's a hashtag, something like VR hair or something. I mean, like photos of them like after the headset.
It's so awkward. Everything about it is awkward. It's very socially awkward.
Sweaty.
It's sweaty, especially if you're doing the multiple.
You always have to have wipes with you.
Yeah, you have to have wipes, you have to have those
Well,
wipes.
I don't have kids, I have baby wipes in my bag.
Yeah, the VR
Just for
hygiene.
headsets.
There's all sorts with that. For what? For what?
Hey, let's not get into that area of VR.
Yeah, well, it is an area though.
I know,
isn't it?
yeah.
But, it's a big driver. But yeah, so in terms of it being mainstream, the hardware is still a barrier at the moment. There's these two things, there's hardware and there's content. And at the moment we're covering off content really well with gaming, and we're starting to get further with films and maybe starting to look into branching narrative and that kind of thing, which is what I'm interested in, and it's probably the most niche thing. But we seem to go, we can't do them both at once. You've got to have distribution through these headsets. We've now got the mobile, but they don't really have the power yet. Yeah. We're starting to get like these new things coming out. I've never tried one. I hope it's good, but at the moment the best thing I've tried is the Vive, probably. But that is still, there's so much of a barrier for that to be mainstream. You know, you've got to have these lighthouses to put in a room. You've got to have a room. You've got to have this big ass computer. You've got to be able to set it up when the controllers stop working. You've got to figure out this geeky, nerdy thing of like, oh, it's connected to the sound system instead of the. It's so hard for ordinary people to do that, you know. Like, one day we'll get there, but it's, you know, at the moment it's hardware and content both need. Sorry to be devil's advocate. I'm like, go for it. Let's do it. I want to do it, but it's not.
No, it's awesome because that can take us to contact lenses.
Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, we were talking about this briefly just before we started. So obviously VR is an interesting one because obviously we are at that stage where we have so much tech that you have to drag around with you, and I do it often across London with a big flight case and with a PC in it and extra bits in case something breaks. But it's learning how long or how far away are we actually from that point of I'm just going to stick a contact lens in my eye and then that's it, that's all I need.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, you know, do you think that's a possibility? Do you think that's something that, you know, maybe, like we say, in 2036 that's the stage we'll be at? Or is it something that was like, nah, that's not going to happen?
I think we'll be there before. I don't know.
Well,
Like
I mean, if you think about 20 years ago, so 2036 is in 20 years. 20 years ago, I didn't have a desktop. I didn't really have the internet. I didn't have, well, the very, very first, very, very first sort of brick mobile phones came out. And now you have an incredibly powerful computer that's in your pocket that you use every day. And so if you sort of think then 20 years on top of that, escalating at the same rate, improving at the same rate, there's no reason why it won't go down that route. And I think that touches on the last panel, some of the things you were saying about when does it become too intrusive? Do people want contact lenses where you're always plugged in, you can't look away? I think in virtual reality, with the state of the way it is now, especially from the entertainment side. So the piece that I've been working on does treat some quite difficult subjects, and one of the things that people are finding is the hardest thing about it is you're confronted with the content. With VR, you're in the 360 space, it feels like you're standing inside the film itself, and you can't look away. You can't just look at your phone, you can't just talk to the person next to you. You are confronted by the content and you have to watch it. We've got lots of different ways of playing audio to you. So we have binaural audio, which sort of, you can understand spatially where the sound is coming from. You have spatial sound, stereoscopic sound, and you can't not listen to it. You are completely 100% immersed in that space. By the way, if you haven't done VR, go do it. It's very, very cool and very hard to convey unless you've actually tried it. So I'd recommend everyone go find a Rift and try VR. But well,
it's in her bag.
Exactly.
It's in my bag. I got one if anyone wants to try.
But I think, yeah, we're going to find very quickly a line of how far is too far, and what do people actually want to be shown, what do people need in their everyday life, and once it's on a contact lens in front of your eye, you can't look away. It's a permanent part of your life until you take the contact lens out, and it's working out what that content will be, I think, will determine how quickly we progress with that kind of stuff.
That's really scary when you think about it. Like, obviously we are enthusiasts and we love virtuality, but there is a really scary part to it. You know, there's that whole, you know, has anyone seen WALL-E? Do you remember that scene, you know, when they've got the people on those chairs and they've just got this screen in front of them? Like, I used to, when I first got into VR, that's how I envisioned the future. I was like, that'd be me. Yeah, it's me, a screen right here, and I'll just look, and you know, my eyes will track everything. But that is quite an actual future, which I think, you know, and I've seen artwork. You know, I've seen artwork where there's people wired into all these with a headset on up to a PC, and they're just sitting there in their pants, and you're like, oh, okay, it's not as fun as I thought it would be. But I think that's something we really need to think about, and I think us people that work in the industry have a real responsibility to make sure that it goes the right way. Like, you know, I'm a big believer that education will be huge in VR, and I feel like, you know, when I was at school, I was rubbish at school, I was crap. I just hated everything about it. I got a little bit better when I got to college because I had a bit more freedom. But, you know, the fact that, you know, being able to put a headset on and actually go back to the trenches and actually visualise that something purely in my brain, that actually would make a huge impact on me now.
A lot more powerful.
Yeah.
And actually, so one of the project that I worked with, Macans, was it's a weird name. It's memory palaces in VR. So it's the whole concept of teaching you how to learn through like visual and spatial cues as opposed to text. And a really interesting application and quite powerful was a study that we did with kids in Cambridge where were quite severely dyslexic, and within like say 10-15 minutes of applying that new way of thinking and trying, like, you're basically eradicating what they struggle with. So you're teaching children a whole new way to look at the world and learn, not necessarily textbook based, but I think that's where we're heading, and education is so ripe for disruption these days, especially given children's like attention span of about 6 seconds or 140 characters, but it's or even snaps, it's even less than that. But it's really, really powerful. I completely agree that we're entering a really interesting stage and where it's leading us is I think Google actually started doing it with cardboards, going to a couple of classes and giving
Google Expeditions.
Yeah, Google Expedition stuff, and I'm really excited to see what's going to come next.
So what do you think? What's coming?
Well, I just wanted to touch on that point about attention spans. I think generally in society we are moving away from scheduled, structured, longer forms of entertainment and content. We consume things faster and on demand. Like, I don't know anyone my age who sort of gets ready to sit down at 7 PM to watch their favourite programme. It's on iPlayer, it's on 4OD. When they're at home, 11 o'clock at night, they can just pop it on and watch it when they need to. To go to the cinema, it now takes an entire evening, an entire afternoon. It's your entire event for that time period, because films are 3 hours long now, and people watch them in 2 parts at home later on Netflix. And with virtual reality, because you're in the 360 space, you take in so much more input than you do from just a 2D frame screen. So we can tell a story now in 20 minutes, and it will be the same story that would take 2 hours to do through a screen. The same with education. You can tell a story with every single part of the room that you're currently in VR. Like you use the trenches example. To sit and watch, I don't know, walking through the trenches in a 2D film, you'll understand some information, you'll understand what you're being told, but to be in it and to get the atmosphere and to get the sounds and the sights and fully understand what it's like to be there is so much more powerful. And that takes 5 minutes to place you in that space, rather than having to listen to an hour documentary to get the same information. So I think VR will really fit in with our lifestyles moving forward. We will get much more entertainment, much more information in a much quicker, concise way, which then opens you up to do whatever else you want to do with your day. You know, you get that same impact in short, concise bursts. So. I'm always
Yeah, so I was going to say, actually, it's really interesting. I don't know if we're going to go for I think a step further can be like mixed reality, in which where not just it's a different purpose than that, but actually something that is seamless and part of your day-to-day life. That's kind of augmented. So like holograms. If you heard of the HoloLens, where you can have holograms everywhere. That are literally kind of in one of those like futuristic videos that you can watch, like where you're interacting with like screens that just move, and you've got like, say you're in a long distance relationship and you have a hologram of a Skype chat that you're having with your long distance partner, and you can just like pinch it, make it bigger, make it smaller, take it around with you as you brush your teeth. So I think that it's a really interesting area to look at.
I think there's still two different things, and I think they'll both go ahead. I definitely think the immersiveness of VR, like content in terms of narrative or a new kind of narrative, is wonderful, like taking you out of it. But also augmented and mixed, having it involved in your world. I've always got the, yay, I love it, and then, oh, what's the implications, especially when you have a child, and I don't know whether I always do have a critique of tech in my head too. You know, our short attention spans and the hyper realism of everything, and the bombardment of the senses that we're doing right now. I mean, when I come home from work and I've been VR prototyping and designing all day, honestly, it's not that my eyes are bleeding, but they're under strain. And maybe that's because of the quality of the hardware at the moment, but I don't know if I want my child to be in that constantly right now. And we don't know what the implications are of them having their senses completely taken over like that. And we don't know who's going to, I'm sorry for being, I do love it. But the thing that we were talking about before with contacts, and I mean, some company, whoever invents that, we've already got Apple, who now, and I used to work for Apple, love Apple, love Apple. We've now got Apple, have got they've got our ears and our eyes are a direct line into our brains. And they now own this entire supply chain, from making music to distributing it through iTunes, into your ears, into your brain. If they also do contact lenses and they start producing content, then they have your two major senses, and nobody else is in between them and you. And it's, I don't know.
There's a really interesting mini film. I can't remember what it's called. Do you know?
Oh yeah, the Korean
hyper realities. And basically, I don't know if anyone here has seen it. I've forgotten. It's a really interesting. Yes. I know who it is, but I just can't remember the name. But yeah, that I remember watching that. Yes. Yeah. I remember. Just basically, so the idea is you're walking through the streets and you have apps literally in front of you. So you can, you Google, put your hand up, and Google's there and you search. And then it's the whole kind of concept of her she wants to restart her life. She's kind of, do I delete everything and begin again? Which I just found was a really interesting concept. So obviously with the thing with contact lenses, the fact that if you pop these in, are we all going to literally just be seeing all these weird applications in front of our eyes, and are we actually going to be able to get rid of it? It's really,
but then she gets hacked.
She gets hacked.
This identity crisis of if you get hacked, but I mean, whenever you have an input into your brain like that, there is a vulnerability somewhere.
Of course.
I think on the psychological point of view as well, going back to the original topic, the 2036 thing, I think by that point, with the way that graphics cards and some of the technology is going, we will get to a point where we will hit the graphical Turing test. We will be able to pass it. At the moment, one of the biggest problems with virtual reality, as of today, is when you put it very, very close to your face and you stretch them out to be 360, you can see a lot of the pixels. And that's going to be improved with the new 4K screens, and it's always going to get slightly better and better and better. There are some groups, so Microsoft HoloLens, there's a group called Magic Leap, and they're working with the technology in a slightly different way, which means that pixels will no longer be a problem. And I think that there's going to be an issue very much around the fact that you pop a headset on or you wear the contact lenses and your brain cannot tell if what you're looking at is exactly the same as this right now. You can't tell if it's through technology or through real life. And I think that has so many implications, positive and negative, to be honest. Like, I think that there are things where it could really be interesting to use it. But psychologically, I think virtual reality, again, it has a responsibility to be, take it forward in the right way and not mess with people too much, because I think it can.
At this point, I'd like to open up to the audience, because I think we're at a really key point right now, and I think we could probably get some awesome questions. So if that's the microphone, go, run. I'm blind as a bat.
Hi. Do you think we're going to put on the HoloLens to get away from everything and just relax? Because visual overload and all of that, I need to feel like I need a break and I've got this thing on to not be disturbed.
Well, there are currently sort of relaxation apps out there where you sort of pop it on, you lie down, you're on a beach, and there's some interesting uses of that within therapy and some other areas. I was talking to a group of people who were interested in putting virtual reality into spas. So you go to have spa treatments, you're under like a sunbed or have lights on you, you have a breeze, and you're on a beach. And again, if it goes back to what we were just saying about, you can't tell if it's real or not. And you will be able to relax, take yourself out of reality. And I do genuinely think that there is a really big use, and I would personally do that. I think it would be a great use for it.
Yeah, I think I was actually discussing just the other day in another meetup concept of advertising and marketing in VR. Like, once we're coming from the commercial standpoint, and one of the questions that we debated was exactly what you said. Like, if we're putting the headset to escape to another world, do we want to? How would marketing and advertising work in that moving to that world? Is that going to be too invasive? Like, how would that be kind of branded like via 3D objects that we can see, or is like how would that work? And we don't really know.
I think it's probably more of the same as augmented reality. It's like hyper reality. It's when people would pay us to advertise for them. You buy your own avatar that's branded by people. Like, you project. It's the same as Facebook now. You project your own identity in whatever way it is.
Yeah.
I did a piece where it was imagining this future, and when everybody was dressed in. So it was filmed again. It was a live performance, but it was filmed against like a blue screen, and all the actors were wearing a blue, like spray painted blue outfit. So this is like future. Everybody just wears like the blue mocap suits or whatever, and then you just buy whatever style you want, or you drive a little box blue car, and then you buy the Ferrari like augmented thing over the top or whatever. It's not a happy world. I always go that way, don't I?
Any other questions? Oh, I think we've got one of them.
I'm just thinking about how long people will give this in terms of the hardware barrier. I'm thinking of a fairly recent example that's gone through like 3D TVs, and how many times we've attempted this, and this again, it was fairly recently come back, and then it's actually flopped because it never got past that issue of having to put on, why the hell should I put on a pair of glasses to watch TV, especially if you already wear glasses, you pain in the backside. So I was wondering about your thoughts on how long do you think, I know this has a much wider ramifications, but how long do you think people are going to give this before they might think, we've been long enough, and you haven't kind of...
Yeah, we're all screwed.
I mean, because I've worked in 3D TV before, and the barrier then was always, it was again hardware and content. So hardly anyone was making content. Really, it was driven by Hollywood and people selling new TVs. They were the backing behind it. Whereas now we've got Silicon Valley behind it, the entire gaming industry. Like, it has a definite product in gaming that can actually get out to people. It feels like there's more ways in now and more ways of getting it distributed and more money as well.
There's
a lot more money.
A lot of money. Yeah.
Especially in America, like they're full of VCs obviously over there, but they've pushed a hell of a lot. I can't remember what the figures were from Oculus Connect this year, but it was something like 250k so far have been pushed into Oculus, and then they're going to invest another load in the next couple of years.
And Magic Leap got what, like 200 and something, 74 million.
Yeah.
Something.
From backed by Google and
all of the major companies are in it as well this time round. So Microsoft, Google, Sony, they're all making moves. Facebook own most of it.
Patented
Well,
something. Don't know.
Apple's a bit slower. They haven't announced anything concrete yet, but there are so many companies betting on this and putting so much research into making it happen. I don't know how long it'll take. I really hope for my career that it does sort of in the next 5 years. It's entering into the mainstream. Everyone will have definitely tried it. Large majority will have owned it. But it's the content. It's seeing the reason to buy it. The headsets now exist, and like I said, everyone's got a smartphone. The technology is not a barrier. Price point is not really a barrier. It's why should you care? Why should you try and get virtual reality into your life? And I think
why would you put a headset on in the first
yeah,
place?
exactly.
Added value to
exactly, and it's
yeah.
touching on lots of different industries that I think will make that happen.
Just a quick follow-up, so in terms of consolidation, obviously you've got choices at the moment. Obviously we're going to go through another whole war of like Blu-ray, what the heck it almost called, and Betamax and VHS. How far away are we from that? That kind of be a fairly standard approach that will be one platform.
I think it will be a platform per application, personally. I think the gaming will stay quite high-end, that you need a lot more processing power because you're trying to do things in real time. I think for entertainment, it needs to be more accessible. It needs to be able to just pop it on, like you'll sit down in front of the TV. I think education, again, is going to be more accessible, especially if we do start teaching children. You need to have lots of versions which are perhaps much more simpler to use. And I don't think that there will be an overall winner. I think that there'll be a winner in each sector.
Sorry.
We often hear of like so many wars, Oculus, HTC, and Gear, and Unreal Engine, Unity. I think I like them all. I think they've all got positives and negatives. I don't know if we're gonna get to a point where we have one clear winner, but at the same time, I don't think, like with smartphones, you've got Android, you've got Apple, you've got HTC coming out now, Google, Pixel. I mean, I don't think we'll ever like converge. I think it's. I agree with Alyssa. It'll be like a different application, I think.
Anything to add on that?
Yeah, there is something in the accessibility for developers as well, and people creating content. So up until now, it's been. I mean, I still find it very difficult to make something for iPhone because it's so hidden away in the thing. Whereas, say the Samsung Gear has been really easy to make stuff for, and the Vive has been easier to make stuff for them because the Oculus came out later, and so they've got that side to contend with as well. Like, how do they get it to the people who are making content? So yeah, at the moment it is. I really agree with that assessment. Like it's interesting that there's the film-based content, the 360 stuff, and how that needs to. It's almost like it's trying to compete with TV.
Yeah.
And that is much more ubiquitous, isn't it? Whereas gaming has always been a niche market. And they're more early adopters and more willing to go for the heavier interaction, invest more money and more time into that. So
and actually start permeating like social media as well. So we've got YouTube and Facebook kind of doing 360 stuff now.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, just upload a 360 image or anything to Facebook quite simply is really cool. So I have obviously have a Gear and a Samsung phone and a Samsung 360 camera. So the fact I literally can just pop the camera there, film something, pop it on Facebook, I'm just like, yeah, I'm better than all of you. But that's a really nice thing because it's, it's fact that maybe, like for example, on Thursday we did a VR Girls meet-up, and the fact we could just put a camera in the middle of the room and see who everyone was there, and it was so nice because I was just like, if somebody had missed it or couldn't attend, it was just like, oh, I feel like I'm there, I feel like I'm in the room with them, which is really nice. So, which is really cool. Any other questions? Oh my goodness.
My question is related to the last question actually, in terms of how long it's taken for VR to take off. So I remember in the 90s and working with them, great at the time, but awful when you look backwards than that. So it's more around, do you think VR's where we should be focusing versus AR, where if you want to get into the mainstream, obviously VR you need a headset, it's just you in there, nothing else, it's not very sociable, but with AR, potentially, like Google Glass technology, you can be in the kitchen, Jamie on just next to you showing how to cook and no one else knows it type of thing. You're an amazing chef. So I just wonder if you think, is VR the right focus right now, or should we do more in those AR side?
So it might sound like I'm answering every question the same, but I do think that there are very different applications for VR and AR. So right now, I think augmented reality is possibly a couple of years behind virtual reality. They're starting to make a few steps into it. Pokemon Go, everyone's seen it, everyone's tried it, but it was very, very basic. But virtual reality is, we are now at a point where we can, as Sammy was saying, we can film worlds, we can totally create worlds in CGI, we can sort of start to experiment with different things. And VR does close you out. VR demands your attention, your full attention span for however long you want, half an hour, an hour. AR fits over everything else that's going on in your world. So you could be showing content on in Google Glass or HoloLens or whatever, and you can still just check the phone. You can still just be distracted by the person next to you, and it's not quite the same scenario, and there are applications for both. So I don't see a world with just AR or just VR in the future. I think there'll be both, and I'm not sure which one will be more successful. It's hard to predict until we've got technology that can do them both really well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the industries want to align themselves. Yeah.
I also think it's interesting to then to see both the augmented but also mixed reality. So I don't know if you're aware of Magic Leap, a company in Florida that's been very hush-hush, and no one has really known what they're up to.
Don't tell me anything.
They won't tell anyone anything other than I tried applying too, because I was like, they sound really cool. And they've got, if you go on the website, there's like a whale coming out of the floor, and there's it's very, very hot, like future thinking tech, in which you don't, apparently it's contact lenses, but no one knows how it works. And they've got like their job offerings are like senior wizard and blah blah blah. So it sounds pretty cool. But yeah, but I think if we're moving like I saw the potential for like HoloLens, field of vision. It's still in development, so we are still a long way off when it comes to AR. But just the idea of having like holographic input, so things that not only augment your day-to-day, but that you can interact with, can be quite powerful and useful, and kind of make our lives better, which is what I think AR and MR will attempt to do.
I mean, I think augmented probably has more of a chance of being mainstream. It's not there yet. I think you're right. It's way harder to. I mean, at the moment, the only thing I can really do it on is the Google the Tango project. Like that's quite, you can do stuff on that, but you can jump into the Vive and just do all these amazing things. It's so seductive. Like you can really interact with it, whereas you can't do that yet in augmented, or it's very hard to do it. So, but once it does get through, I think augmented just has this magical quality of making the super mundane, magical. There's a reason why it's called Magic Leap. And I heard it was lasers being projected into your eye.
It's like futuristic, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do think changing the world around us and interacting with real objects that are around us, I think, even though we're not there yet, I think that has a lot more magical potential to work across different industries. At the moment, augmented, they're looking at it as business, they're looking at it for engineering and for medical stuff rather than, say, entertainment, whereas VR has been very much about entertainment. So when a technology can cross all these different industries, I think it means it's got they're both going to exist, but I think AR's got more potential for all industries. I'm in entertainment, so yeah.
I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up there. Quickly, before we give you all a round of applause, where can these guys go to experience VR if they haven't managed to try any? Do you still run the VR in a bar?
I do, yes.
Oh,
Do that every 3 months.
Cheeky plug.
Cheeky plug.
Yeah.
Yeah, VR, AR world.
Yeah, so we're gonna, there are loads of different events. There's AR, VR
There's
worlds.
too many.
There are really not too many. Thank God.
So to list them, basically, there's one coming up in October, which I believe is on the 20th or the 19th and the 20th. That's VR/AR. That's kind of focused at a lot of different people, so that's quite a nice one. In looking towards near Christmas, there's something called Vertigo, which happens in Newcastle, which happens every year. Going into sort of next year, there's something that happens called VR UK, which is in February. Then you've got something called VR World Congress, which is in April. That's in Bristol. But yeah, if you type VR into Google, pretty much any meetup you'll see there's loads. And like I say, we started doing women VR.
Also though, if you own a phone, it costs £10 to buy a headset. Go on Amazon, just go buy one. And then you've got a phone, you can watch YouTube, you can watch Facebook in 360, understand what it's like to be inside the space. Like, the barrier's not there anymore, it's more just educating what is possible with the devices that you can buy. So I recommend it.
If not, come around my flat and
It's
we'll
not,
try
yeah. And I was just going to say, yeah, we're actually working on that project. That AVR Center is Augmented and Virtual Reality Center. So it'll be like a space in around Old Street in Shoreditch, mainly from the B2B demo side, but opening late November. So
there you go.
That is one.
For you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.